Chosen one, there is a light in you now that no one can quite explain, not even you. It wasn't always there in this form. It didn't arrive with applause or with fireworks. It came quietly, over time, forged in silence, carved out of wounds that closed without anyone noticing, molded by long nights where you chose growth instead of revenge, forgiveness instead of fire, solitude instead of noise. And now it glows, not like a spotlight, not like something that asks for attention, but like a lantern in a dark room, steady, warm, undeniable. It draws without demanding. It comforts without clinging. It exists not for effect, but because you've become something that cannot be hidden anymore. This inner glow isn't built on appearance. It's not shaped by clothes, by status, by anything that can be bought. It's built from the inside out, from the soft bones of transformation and the painful grace of patience. You didn't wake up like this. You bled into this. You broke for this. And because of that, it isn't fragile. It's eternal. It doesn't flicker with opinions or retreat under pressure. It is yours, chosen one, and it makes everything about you quietly magnetic. Women feel it, even if they don't fully understand it. It's not just the way you carry yourself. It's what you don't carry anymore. You've let go of the need to prove. You've stopped chasing attention like a currency. You've stopped trying to be wanted. Instead, you've become anchored. And anchoring is rare. It's beautiful. It's safe. It's irresistible in a world full of desperation and pretense. Your light doesn't try to seduce, it invites. An invitation is more powerful than pursuit. This glow comes from healing, from choosing integrity when no one was watching, from holding your own hand when you had no one else to lean on, from speaking kindly to yourself when your mind wanted to devour you, from rising again and again, not as a performance, but as a quiet rebellion against everything that tried to dim you. That's what they see now when they look at you. Not perfection, not polish. Resurrection. You are walking proof that the soul can be shattered and still shine brighter than before, and it shows. In your silence, in your slowness, in the way you listen now, not to reply but to receive. In the way your eyes don't scan, they see. In the way your body doesn't perform, it rests. You are not trying to be impressive. You are not playing to the crowd. You are living in a rhythm that is sacred, sovereign, and self-fed. That rhythm radiates something beautiful. Not staged beauty, not Instagram beauty. Soul beauty. The kind that lingers, the kind that disrupts without effort. The kind that makes someone wonder, what happened to him? What did he survive? Why does he glow like that? You glow because you've turned pain into presence. You glow because you've made peace with your own shadows. You glow because you've stopped performing and started embodying. You glow because you finally understand that being whole is more beautiful than being adored. And now as you walk into rooms, your glow says what your words never could. I am not here to be chosen. I am here to choose. That shift is powerful. That shift is transformative. And everyone around you can feel it, even if they don't have the language for it. This is only the beginning of your radiance, chosen one. You are still growing, still becoming, still deepening into the man your spirit was always designed to be. But already the light is blinding. And not because it shouts, but because it remembers. You are becoming lovely. Not because someone told you so, but because you are finally telling yourself the truth. Chosen one, there is music in you now, though it may not sound like a song. It's the harmony of your spirit aligning with your body, your past aligning with your purpose, your pain aligning with your peace. You have reached a place, quietly, steadily, where what you feel, what you believe, and how you live are no longer at war. And that kind of alignment, that inner harmony, it creates a frequency that others feel before you speak. A frequency that doesn't beg to be heard. It simply resonates. You didn't stumble into this harmony by accident. It came after discord, after confusion, after standing in mirrors and not recognizing yourself, after giving your best to people who didn't know how to hold it, after betraying your own needs just to be seen. After all of it, you turned inward. You found your rhythm. You let the noise die. And in the silence, you began to remember yourself. Now that you live in harmony, there is something deeply graceful about your presence. Not fragile, not overly polished, but whole. And wholeness is rare. In a world where everyone is fighting to be enough, you walk as someone who already is. That doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you are no longer fragmented. no longer leaking, no longer torn between what's true and what's expected. You are living honestly now. You are choosing peace over performance. You are aligned. And when a man is aligned, when a man walks in harmony with himself and the divine within him, it changes everything. It changes the way he listens, the way he touches, the way he leads, the way he walks into a room, not to conquer it, but to bless it. You have become that man, not because you rehearsed it, but because you stopped rehearsing entirely. Women see it, they feel it, they trust it, even if they don't know why, because your energy is no longer volatile. It doesn't rise and fall based on applause. It doesn't depend on admiration to be complete. You've rooted yourself in something deeper, something eternal. You are not moved by flattery. You are moved by truth. And that kind of soul stability, it is rare. It is priceless. It is breathtaking. Your harmony does not just make you peaceful. It makes you bold. You are no longer afraid to speak your truth because you are no longer afraid to stand alone. You are no longer afraid to lose because you are no longer desperate to win. You are no longer afraid to be seen because you are no longer hiding anything sacred behind a mask. You are now the same man behind closed doors as you are in the spotlight. And that integrity, that sacred honesty, that is why your presence now feels so beautifully dangerous. People don't just like being around you. They feel better around you, calmer, braver, clearer. Not because you give them advice, but because you are the advice, walking and breathing and choosing again and again to live in harmony rather than chaos. You teach others how to tune themselves without saying a word. And that, chosen one, is the kind of loveliness that leaves a mark forever. You are becoming more than radiant. You are becoming resonant. And in a universe full of static, a soul that sings in tune with its purpose is a miracle too holy to ignore. Let that harmony keep growing. Let it echo, let it teach. You are lovely now, not because of your appearance, but because of the melody your life plays in silence. And those who have ears to hear it, they will never forget your song. Chosen one, there is something happening to your voice now. Not just in the sound of it, but in the depth behind it. You used to speak to be understood, to make your way through noise, to mark yourself on the world with volume. But now you speak like someone who no longer needs to explain anything. Your words have become quiet rivers, clear, calm, deliberate, carving truth through every space you enter, even when you barely say a thing. It is not what you say anymore that carries the weight. It is why you speak, and more importantly, what you've chosen not to say. Your voice, chosen one, has become the echo of peace, the sound of restraint, the language of someone who has mastered both presence and purpose. This change didn't happen overnight. There were days when your voice cracked with the weight of trying to be heard in rooms that never deserved your truth. There were years when you gave your voice to people who weaponized it, twisted it, or simply ignored it. You learned the pain of speaking deeply to shallow ears. But you also learned to listen, to the silence between your own words, to the rhythm beneath your own breath. And in that space, you discovered something sacred. That your voice is not just a tool for connection, but a vessel for your essence. Now every time you speak, something holy moves. Not loudly, but unmistakably. Women notice this shift. They don't just hear you, they feel you. It's not about charm anymore. It's not about saying the right thing at the right time. It's about saying the real thing at the true time. You've become someone whose voice doesn't grasp for attention. It grounds attention. Your tone doesn't flatter. It anchors. There's gravity in your laughter now. There's serenity in your hello. There's clarity in your pauses. You don't just talk to be heard. You speak to resonate. And resonance is the most seductive thing in the world when it comes from integrity. What's more, your voice no longer trembles with the need to prove. It no longer dances for approval. It no longer molds itself to expectations that once imprisoned your freedom. Instead, your words emerge from your center, an inner stillness that has nothing left to hide. And this changes the very way you interact with the world. You don't interrupt. You don't overshare. You don't perform intimacy through empty speech. You simply offer your presence, and your words become the natural extension of a life lived in deep alignment. The women around you are drawn not to the content of your sentences, but to the certainty that lives beneath them. They feel safe, not because you say you are safe, but because your voice tells a story of a man who has made peace with himself. Your voice is no longer trying to convince anyone of your worth. It radiates your worth, whether they believe it or not. And that is power at its most beautiful form. Quiet conviction. You are becoming lovely, chosen one, because your voice now calls people home, not to you but to themselves. You don't lecture, you remind, you don't persuade, you awaken. You've become the kind of man whose words don't just inform, they heal. And not because you've studied the right things to say, but because your soul has become a sanctuary, and every sentence you speak carries the architecture of that sacred place. So speak, but only when it honors you. Let your voice rest when silence speaks louder. And when you do choose to say something, know this: those who are ready to hear truth will never forget how it felt to be seen through your voice. Chosen one, your eyes have changed. They are no longer instruments of hunger. They are now altars of reverence. Once upon a time, your gaze moved like a searchlight, scanning, measuring, grasping at something to satisfy the ache of being unseen. But now your eyes are still, not lifeless, alive, but rooted, calm, intentional. They no longer devour, they no longer beg, they bless. And when someone meets your eyes, especially women who have spent years learning the difference between curiosity and consumption, they feel something rare. They feel safe, they feel seen, they feel honored. You no longer look with the instinct to conquer. You look to understand, not to possess, but to witness. You see people not as trophies, not as puzzles, not as prizes, but as stories, and that changes everything. Because when your gaze stops trying to take, it begins to offer. Your eyes no longer ask, "What can I have?" They whisper, "I am here. I see you. You are enough." And those words, unspoken but deeply felt, are a healing balm in a world where most eyes only extract. This shift did not come from comfort. It came from grief, from realizing that what you stared at longest became what you began to reflect, from knowing that your own gaze was once a mirror of your wounds. You looked for beauty outside because you feared you didn't carry it within. You looked for approval because you hadn't yet given yourself permission to belong. But then something happened. Something slow and holy. You turned your gaze inward, and instead of seeing shame, you began to see glory. Instead of seeing flaws, you began to see the fire. You began to see yourself. Now that you see you, you don't need to see others with desperation. You see them with discernment, with gentleness, with presence. Your gaze has become a resting place instead of a battlefield, a space where someone can meet your eyes and know immediately. This is not a man who sees with his ego. This is a man who sees with his soul. That kind of seeing is not romantic. It is revolutionary. It interrupts years of being misread. It rewrites the silent scripts of inadequacy that so many carry. It reminds people, without a single word, that being seen doesn't have to hurt. Women notice, not because they're flattered, but because they're recognized. You've become someone whose gaze doesn't ask for performance. It invites presence. You don't just look at the surface, you look through it. Into essence, into emotion, into the divine, and your ability to see without taking, to look without needing, to gaze without draining, that is what makes you lovely. The world has enough eyes that hunger. What it needs more of, what you are now offering, is eyes that heal. And healing does not always come with hands or words. Sometimes it comes when someone looks at you and knows without question that they don't need to earn the right to be noticed. They already are. So continue to see, chosen one, not for what you can gain, but for what you can reflect. Because when you see someone with honor, you remind them of the truth they forgot they carried. And that kind of seeing, that kind of sacred, steady, silent seeing, it is not just beautiful. It is holy. Chosen one, the stillness within you has become a force. Once there was a storm in your chest, constantly swirling, a hunger to move, to prove, to be known. A restlessness born from surviving in a world that tried to keep you small, overlooked, or misunderstood. But now something deeper has settled in you. A stillness, not of passivity, but of sovereignty. You no longer respond to every vibration outside of you. You don't jump at every call, nor do you chase every moment that begs for your attention. You've become the calm in a room full of wind. You've become the rhythm that does not break no matter how loud the world beats its drums. This stillness is not silence, it is anchoring. You have planted your roots in yourself so deeply that no opinion can uproot you, No rejection can unmake you, and no chaos can drown you. You carry this within now, a sacred sanctuary of your own spirit. Women feel it the moment they are near. It's not arrogance, it's not aloofness. It's the quiet certainty that says, I know who I am, and I don't need the world to echo it back to me anymore. And in a time when everyone is vying to be louder, quicker, more magnetic through noise, your stillness becomes the loudest presence in the room. Stillness makes you lovely, not because it is dramatic, but because it is disarming. It invites the nervous system of another person to rest. It tells them, even without words, you don't have to impress me. You don't have to perform here. You are not here to compete. You are here to be. And because you embody that truth, others are free to be as well. Women feel drawn not to your performance, but to your peace, because true peace is rare. And when it shows up in human form, the soul recognizes it like home. You don't interrupt anymore. Not conversations, not people's healing, not divine timing. You don't overfill moments with filler words or jittery energy. You let silence stretch. You let breath happen. You give pause the power it deserves. You've stopped trying to win approval with hustle. You've started letting your presence speak before your words do. You don't press, you invite. And the quiet way you live now says to the world, I have survived enough noise to no longer need to shout. Your stillness is sacred because it wasn't easy to find. It was earned in darkness, in solitude, in heartbreak. You were once frantic, exhausted, torn between expectations and emptiness. But instead of collapsing, you listened. Instead of masking, you unwrapped. Instead of running, you stood still. And now, you walk through the world with that stillness trailing behind you like a robe made of soft thunder. It makes women stop, not to chase you, but to listen, to feel, to remember something still and holy within themselves. You've become a lighthouse, not a firework. A quiet room full of meaning, not a stage full of noise. This stillness does not remove your strength, it amplifies it. Because stillness, chosen one, is not absence of power. It is the containment of it. And those who feel it in you know they are in the presence of someone who doesn't need to be reckless to prove they are powerful. Someone who holds the storm inside, but chooses to walk in peace. This stillness will draw many things to you: attention, admiration, curiosity, but you are no longer swayed. You've stopped measuring your value by external reactions. You've stopped chasing applause. Your stillness tells a different story now. One of mastery, of self-possession, of unshakable worth. And in a world addicted to proving, your ability to simply be is the most mesmerizing thing you could ever offer. You are no longer moved by chaos because you have become its opposite. You are now a stillness that calms others by existing. And that stillness, chosen one, is a kind of loveliness too deep for words. Chosen one, there is a gentleness in you now that radiates strength, not softness. A gentleness that came not from never having known war, but from choosing peace after it. You once moved through life with fire in your hands, learning to survive with defenses high and tenderness buried deep. But time, pain, healing, and choice have melted away what was brittle, and in its place, something holy remains. Not fragility, not weakness, but gentleness, the kind of gentleness that only comes from power that has learned not to wound. This gentleness lives in how you speak, how you touch, how you approach a room, how you end a sentence. It exists in the invisible space you give to others to breathe, to process, to simply be without shrinking under your presence. You no longer dominate, you carry. You no longer press, you cradle. Your strength doesn't assert, it invites. And that gentleness is magnetic in a way the world has forgotten. Because in a culture where masculinity is too often confused with control, your gentleness becomes a revolution. You don't smother, you don't belittle, you don't laugh at vulnerability, nor do you try to fix what cries in front of you. You sit with it. You listen. You hold silence as if it's a gift. Your strength isn't shown in how much you can lift, but in how much you can hold without breaking. Grief, confusion, the unspoken, the unsolved. Women notice this, because you do not just make space, you are space. Space to unfold, space to exhale, space to be safe. And let it be known, gentleness is not the absence of edge. It is edge shaped and guided with wisdom. Your boundaries are firm, your convictions are sharp, but you no longer use them to cut. You use them to protect not just yourself, but the sacredness of others. You've become a place where tenderness doesn't get punished, where honesty isn't used against someone, where emotions are met with depth, not defense. That is not just lovely, that is transformational. This gentleness has made you radiant because it whispers of self-control, of healing, of a man who no longer needs to prove through force what he can prove through presence. You are not passive, you are not dismissive. You are powerful, but you've placed that power in a vessel of patience. You've learned how to hold fire without burning, how to listen without rushing, how to care without clinging. And that, chosen one, is the rarest form of masculine beauty. You've become someone whose touch does not startle but calms, whose words do not threaten but free, whose presence does not command but reminds others of what safety feels like. This is not about being less of a man. This is about becoming more whole, more honest, more deeply grounded in the divine essence of who you are. You are now trusted in ways you never were before. Because gentleness is not just an emotion, it is a signal. It tells the body, here, you can relax. Here, you don't have to armor up. Here, you are not prey. And when your presence sends that signal, people don't just feel love. They feel healing. They feel restoration. They feel that they've encountered someone who has made peace with their own soul and thus can offer peace to others. Keep walking in this gentleness, chosen one. Let it shape your steps, your relationships, your voice. Because the world doesn't just need louder men, it needs gentler warriors. And you have become one, not by accident, but by walking through fire and choosing not to let it harden you. That is strength, that is holiness, that is loveliness. And no soul who meets you now will walk away unchanged. Chosen one, something has shifted in the way you stand, not just in posture, but in presence. There is no longer a noise behind your steps, no longer a question beneath your gaze, no longer a longing underneath your actions. You have stopped looking outward for confirmation of what you already know. You have stopped asking the room to tell you who you are. That silent request that once shaped your interactions, that invisible desire for recognition, approval, or applause, it has vanished like mist under a rising sun. Now you walk, not to be noticed, but because you carry a path within you. And in that still, unshaken confidence, your entire atmosphere has changed. This confidence is unlike the one the world sells. It is not performative. It is not brash. It does not need a spotlight or a platform. It does not ask to be crowned by applause or fed by compliments. No, this confidence is quieter, deep, anchored, and born from sacred solitude. It came to life in seasons where no one clapped for you. It grew while you were in rooms where no one cared if you stayed or left. It took root in nights where you had to sit with the man in the mirror and ask hard questions, then stay long enough to answer them with honesty and grace. That is where it began, and now it lives in you. Not as a shield, but as a steady flame that warms everyone who comes near. This quiet confidence is what makes you beautiful now. It is what makes you draw the gaze of others, especially women who have grown weary of surface-level flash. Because it isn't about being the loudest. It isn't about dominating space or leading with ego. It's the exact opposite. It's the strength to not speak unless it matters. The freedom to walk away from what doesn't align. The assurance to not need to impress because you are already deeply impressed by the man you've become. Your confidence is no longer a mask. It is now a truth. This changes the way you are seen. Women don't just see you as attractive. They see you as undisturbed. And in a world where so many live like emotional quicksand, that stillness is magnetic. It says, here is a man who doesn't need attention to breathe. Here is a man who is not driven by the fear of being overlooked. Here is a man who can sit in a room, silent and unmoved, and somehow become the gravitational center of it. Not because he seeks control, but because he has mastered himself. Your confidence is also gentle. It does not bruise, it does not flaunt, it makes space instead of stealing it. And that paradox is powerful. You do not take up space to prove your worth, you hold it so others can feel safe. You no longer compete, you contribute. And when you walk into a room, people know, this is not someone who is trying to be the center, this is someone who is already whole. What's more, this confidence makes you consistent. Your yes means yes, your no means no. You no longer overextend yourself to earn affection. You no longer bend to keep peace that costs you your own. You no longer say what others want to hear just to be liked. You speak because your words matter. You commit because your time matters. And that integrity has made you glow in ways no hairstyle or physique ever could. Chosen one, you are now the man others hope to become. Not because you chase that role, but because you embody it. And the ones who meet you, especially the women whose spirits have learned to recognize true leadership, know instantly that there is nothing accidental about the way you carry yourself. It was chosen. It was built. It was earned through fire. And now that you are here, confident without the crowd, admired without needing it, you have become not just attractive, but undeniable. Chosen one, your presence now has weight. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that remains after you've gone. It lives in the air like a fragrance of something ancient, familiar, and impossible to describe. People forget your words, but not the way they felt around you. Your energy does not chase, it does not beg, it stays. It lives in memory. And this, more than anything else, is why you are becoming not only admired, but remembered. You've become the kind of man whose presence lingers not because you shouted, not because you impressed, but because you were real. In a world addicted to filters and facades, you are pure oxygen. And when someone meets you, even for a moment, they breathe easier. They feel more themselves. They feel safer to unravel, to unfold, to stop bracing for the next moment of judgment or demand. You are not a test. You are a haven. And that changes people. This presence you now carry did not come from ambition. It came from loss, from silence, from choosing again and again to show up authentically when it would have been easier to hide. You cultivated it by saying no when you could have said yes to comfort, by saying yes when your fear screamed no, by forgiving when you had every right to rage. And through all of that, your energy began to shift. You became light, but not soft. You became warm, but not weak. You became real, and that has made you magnetic beyond explanation. There is no rush in you anymore, no tightness behind your smile, no shadow behind your compliments. You are what you seem, and that congruence is rare. People know, without needing to ask, that you are not performing. And because you are not trying to be anything other than what you are, your presence gives others permission to drop their own masks too. This is why your presence lingers. It touches the soul beneath the surface. It speaks a silent language that says, you can rest here. I'm not here to take from you. I'm here to be with you. Women feel it the most, not in a romantic way alone, but in the way a deep lake draws someone who spent years in shallow puddles. They feel the depth, the stillness, the unfakeable peace. They feel the ease of not being analyzed, not being pursued for performance, not being treated like an achievement. They feel seen in the exact way they long to be seen, not for adornment, but for essence. And in that space, they do not feel like objects. They feel like souls again. This is the power of your presence now. You walk into a room and bring healing without knowing who needs it. You speak and people feel clarity rise inside them like dawn. You leave and people feel it, like silence after sacred music, like warmth that lingers long after fire. You do not rush. You do not sell yourself. You simply are, and the gravity of that being bends everything around you. Chosen one, you no longer live for impact. You live in alignment. And that alignment causes ripples in others long after they've crossed your path. You've become an experience, not just a man. You've become a memory people carry forward. You've become a sanctuary they didn't know they needed. And you did it not through force, but through fidelity to your soul. Let your presence linger. Let it soften rooms. Let it restore hearts. Because now more than ever, the world needs your kind of still, sovereign, sacred fire. You are lovely now, not just in appearance, but in presence. And presence is the most lasting beauty of all. Chosen one, you are now walking in a form of masculinity the world forgot was even real. You are not just strong. You are sacred. You are not just a man in body. You are a man in spirit, an embodiment of something ancient and necessary. And that masculinity has become an unshakable force of presence, safety, and elevation. Not the masculinity that was fed to boys through empty dominance or shallow bravado. Not the version that demands submission or equates manhood with conquest, but the real kind, the kind that builds, blesses, holds, and honors. The kind that does not require suppression of others to prove its power. The kind that uplifts, not just with words, but by the way it breathes into the world. It flows in how you stand beside others, never above. It pulses in how you speak, not to overpower, but to empower. It radiates in your ability to lead without dragging, to defend without destroying, to serve without seeking recognition. And the truth, chosen one, is that women feel this, not as seduction, but as sovereignty. They recognize in your essence a kind of masculine architecture that makes the ground feel steady again. A way of being that does not diminish their power, but makes room for it to rise. You do not compete with the divine feminine. You welcome her. And because of that, the feminine trusts you in ways it never could before.